More than money, more than gadgets, more than square footage, more than professional accolades, we can see in our culture the value of time. Time as a commodity that is precious. It's prevalent just in sort of the common sayings that we use without even really thinking about them over the course of a day. Time is of the essence. We're wasting time. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I want to honor your time. We need to make more time for each other. Time flies when you're having fun. See you next time. Time itself is a measurable good. You can hear it in those phrases, right? Time is something that can be spent like you spend your money. Time is something that can be wasted like you wasted that Nordic Track ski machine that you bought in the 90s and then you just hung your laundry on it. You can waste time that same way. Time can be saved up, right? I'm working towards some time off. And so it can be stored for some future use out there beyond today, just like we would save up for the new golf club or the new boat. Time has value. But time is funny, right? We commodify time and make it something we can package and possess, but time itself really is cyclical. It's circular, right? Think about an analog clock face and the second hand as it ticks away, right? Marking each second, and as it makes its progress, eventually it makes one rotation around the clock face every 60 seconds. But then every minute, that longer minute hand shifts, making one journey from the 12 back to the 12 every 60 minutes, and then that shorter hour hand makes that same journey over a 12-hour period, all a circular pattern of time. Then we have the days of the week, right? Saturday concludes and Sunday begins a new day of the week, the calendar repeating itself every 7 days, and then expand that into the months of the year. And as we go through the year, we arrive at December 31st, and we put up a new calendar that says January 1. It repeats itself, the months of the year. Every 12 months, we turn over a new calendar. And all that, of course, you all know this, is because the Earth on its axis rotates every 24 hours to make a day, another circular motion, and every 365.25 days, it makes one revolution around the sun, that elliptical motion, again, another circular image for the marking of time. We've found that the oldest way that people have ever had to measure time is the use of the sundial. Archaeologists tell us that the sundial can be dated back to at least 3,500 BC. The oldest one that we know of that's still able to be seen is from the 8th century BC. It's in Egypt. You all know how a sundial works. The sun beats down on the sundial, and the shadow moves around the face to tell you what time of day it is. As sundials became more prevalent throughout the world to mark the passage of time, they became not just a tool, but they became a piece of art. They were quite ornate, and they gained the practice of having a motto attached to them. Some of these sundial mottos are positive encouragement, things like, "The hour flees, seize the day. Take the gifts of this hour," another sundial says. Still another, "The sun shines for everyone." But then there are these other sundial mottos that are significantly more fatalistic. "Thus passes a lifetime. Life passes like a shadow. Every hour wounds, and the last one kills." In each case, there is the acknowledgement that while time itself is cyclical, the seconds marking a minute, minutes into hours, hours into days, weeks, months, and on and on and on, human life, the span of a human life is linear. We're born, we grow, we mature, we age, and we die. Hence the pressure to make the most of the time we've been given, because it is a commodity that we cannot accumulate more of to try and use it later. There's yet to be a Silicon Valley CEO or a political leader or a scientific expert who's figured out some way to package up more time that they can use to elevate their status over others. We see the wealthiest people, the people with the most resources, their helicopters crash. They suffer a massive heart attack. Nobody has a way to guarantee that they can have more time than someone else. We're here, and then life is over, and that clock face just keeps ticking away. And so out of this anxiety about our inability to control the commodity of time comes this industry to try to capitalize on that inability. If we can't control time, then surely we can harness it, like a bull rider riding on a bull or something. And so we make these vision boards. You made a vision board? Or you start a new exercise program or a new diet regimen. I'm going to cut down on my sodium so I can have more time. You get that new calendar, this day planner. This one will help me get my life organized. Or you download that latest app to your phone, or you cover your desk in different kinds of to-do lists or sticky notes to mark things off to try to use time more efficiently. If I can't control it, then maybe I can master the use of it like a champion surfer can ride the giant wave into shore. I just need the right strategy, the right tools. I just need to practice effective time management. And why is there this obsession to harness time in such a way? There's something that seems pretty deeply ingrained in us, that we want our lives to count for something. You know, it's like that kid that you'll see, he's always carved his name into the side of like the bridge on the hiking trail. Matt was here. Right? We want to be remembered. We want to make a mark on the world in some way. One of our greatest fears is that we might be forgotten, or our lives wouldn't matter or bear any particular significance. But then the question comes, who are we trying to prove this life for? Who are we trying to show that our life counts? Is it your mom? So that you showed that it was worth it for her to go through that whole pregnancy thing and childbirth and feed you and raise you and teach you stuff? You want to prove that it was worth it to her? Or other way around, is it to prove to your children that you were a good parent, so that when you die and they're throwing dirt on your grave, somebody will say something nice over you, and maybe they'll remember to have fresh flowers put on your tombstone each year on your birthday? Or maybe it's the company. You dedicate your time, you prove your worth to the company, and they'll put an oil portrait of you in the hallway when you retire. Or maybe they'll name the new conference room or the new wing after you when you're not there anymore. Or maybe it's even that we want to prove ourselves to God. We live with some image of a final judgment scene where we stand before God, and God puts your life on the reel-to-reel and hits play, and the play-by-play of your life plays back, and God evaluates if you put your time to good enough use for God in order to warrant eternal bliss in a heavenly realm. But think about it. Think about this need to prove ourselves, to make our lives count. Just think, if you have children, okay? You've maybe told stories to your kid or your kids about your grandparents, their great-grandparents, right? But one day your kids grow up and they may have kids themselves. Do you think your child is going to tell their child about their own great-grandparents that they never really even knew? Who knows anything really about their great-great-grandparents? I can't even name all of mine. I certainly don't know where they're buried. The most I've ever found out is when we paid for an Ancestry.com account for a little while. Or Or what about being a great leader or an international figure, right? That's the way you prove you were worthwhile. But what about Millard Fillmore, Chester Arthur? These people were presidents of the United States, presidents of your country and mine. What do we know about them now? Or even better yet, Alexander the Great, one of the most important military and political figures in human civilization. And if we know anything about him, most of us know enough to maybe get the answer right on a crossword puzzle. So you see, families don't remember. Nations don't remember. Companies don't remember. Time keeps moving and we're all lost to it eventually. This is a real uplifting sermon. In our last week of this Some Assembly Required series. Time is fleeting, you're going to die, you're going to be forgotten, and time will march on. But I set it up this way because there is some remarkably good news to share this morning. Paul tells us in the passage today, he tells us what time it really is. He says, "You know what time it is, how it is now the moment for you to wake from sleep. For salvation is nearer to us now than when we became believers. The night is far gone, the day is near." See, the message of grace tells us that as we're putting together the pieces of a Christian life, as we've been talking about over these weeks, we don't have to worry about making the most of all of our time, soaking in every second, making every moment count, refusing to blink through the entire childhood and adolescence of our children. People always say, don't blink. Make the most of that time. It's precious. We don't have to live with that anxiety because our life is a gift. Our life is not valuable because of what we accomplish, what we achieve, how productive we are, that we make the greatest of all possible memories. We can celebrate that our life is right because we've been made right with God. We've been forgiven of all our failures, and we've been tethered to Jesus. Our bodies turned into living sacrifices of life to the one who gave us life. In that picture, you put those pieces together. In that picture, time isn't something that has to be feared. It's not something that has to be controlled. What Paul tells us is that right now is the time for love. Paul uses a word for time here, a Greek word called kairos. That's a certain type of time. It's godly time, holy time, the time of God's action. And Paul says that time of God's action, of God's love, is right here, right now, at our doorstep. See, we don't have to evaluate if we're using our time in the right way because God's righteousness lives in us. In fact, grace itself frees us from wanting more from our time than simply to know the love that has already been shown to us. And that grace then frees us to step into each moment of our daily life, to each time, as a space to express love for others, to show love to our neighbor as ourselves. Paul says that fulfills the law and the commandments, that the filling of the law and the commandments by love of the neighbor is never a waste of time. Specifically, he's talking about the 10 Commandments. He highlights some of them in our reading today, specifically the ones about how we relate to other people. And he talks about here how we honor another's life, relationships, and possessions. That is a sign of our love for that person. It's a way of embodying care for them, to honor their life. And it's not something we do out of fear or necessity. It's an overflow of joy that we know in the gospel. And so you want to be a Christian? You want to try walking in this Jesus way? And first, try and trust that you are loved by God and that there is nothing you have to do to prove it. As we come to accept that, a new kind of love takes over our lives, a love that we could never conjure through our self-discipline or our willpower. And then that love moves us out into every time and space to share that love, to show that love, to give our life away for others. Thinking about time, I know we've spent a long time now in this pandemic, and I know people are sick of it. I am too. We've heard, though, this phrase, I've heard it, maybe you have, we've lost a whole year, We're almost there. We've lost a whole year. I saw specifically this disdain of time at the New Year's Eve, as people were talking about how they were done with 2020, they were ready to rip this year off the calendar, get it over with, and get on to something new. Thing is, though, that attitude is not understanding what time it is. So Halloween, 2020. We were in this pandemic, trick-or-treating, Halloween night was going to look different. We got a knock on our door Halloween afternoon. It was our next-door neighbor, Beth. She had a gift. We opened the door, and she explained that this was for us for Halloween. It was a candy jar. She'd found it, bought it just for us. She thought the colors of the candy jar matched the colors of our kitchen. Inside the jar, there was chocolate for the girls and Skittles for Simon. I know he doesn't really like chocolate bars, she said. And I'm not going to be giving out candy tonight because of the pandemic. We're trying to be safe, but I wanted your kids to have this so that they could celebrate in their own way. Now, our neighbor Beth, she's a member of Raleigh Court United Methodist Church, and she knows what time it is. Not time to hole up and turn in and be depressed, but time to reach out and show love. We were bonded to her through this act of care, knowing the colors of our kitchen, the candy preferences of our kids, taking the time to shop and buy and give that. We never would have had this intimate connection of love if we had just walked up to her house and picked out a year-old Milky Way that she didn't give out last year that sits in a bucket on her front porch. That's what it means to know what time it is. Time for love, for giving to others, an opportunity in the present moment. What about in our church's life? Do we know what time it is? Every week, 10, 12 people write prayer concerns on the prayer line down there out on Grandin Road. We don't know these folks, but they write intimate, vulnerable things. And every Thursday night, we pray for them in this sanctuary because we know what time it is. Advent kits, Lent boxes, ways to pray and worship and stay connected to the calendar of the church year. You see, the pandemic can destroy the Hallmark calendar. It can mess up the school calendar. It can throw off our favorite sports team's calendar, but it can't mess up with Advent or Christmas or Epiphany or Lent or Easter or Pentecost. That calendar is the one that ultimately defines our life, right? Isn't that the calendar that really tells us what time it is? And nothing can stop that time from continuing to be celebrated. We saw that this year. We set up speakers outside and blasted Easter hymns up and down Grandin Road to announce to the neighbors what time it is. It's resurrection time. It's Wednesday night dinner. You pick it up in the parking lot, and in the bag there, starting this week, we had a card with a mealtime prayer and a question to ask around your family table, and then names of another family of your church to pray for. That's not a waste of time. That's knowing what time it is. It's kids hiking on every known trail in the Roanoke Valley, regardless of how cold it gets outside, to learn the healing stories of Jesus so that they are learning already how to tell what time it is. It's money given to mission and to the regular operations of the church. It's celebrating communion on your couch. This isn't just making the most of the time we've been given. It's knowing what time it is. Time to love your neighbor. Time to live by grace. Salvation is nearer to us now than before we began putting together these pieces of the Christian life, and no pandemic, no adjustments to life can thwart the witness of Christian people, because our life isn't determined by how successfully we can ride on the wave of time. Our life is defined by stepping into the holy kairos time of God. And so you want to live this Christian life? If you feel drawn and led to join in the Jesus way here, I've got good news. You have enough time. You're here at just the right time. And this time is an opportunity to share love with others. And no time spent giving and sharing love is ever time lost or wasted.